Welcome back, everyone. For today's deep dive, well, we're stepping back in time to the Tudor court, a world of power, intrigue. And, well, a single misstep could cost you your life.
Absolutely. And it's a world we often see through the lens of Henry VIII, right? And his six wives. But just imagine being caught in the crosshairs of that tumultuous love life. Not once, but twice.
Ooh, that's a scary thought. And that's exactly the story we're diving into today, the life of Jane Boleyn.
Lady Rochford,
Ah, Lady Rochford.
using excerpts from an interview with Tudor historian Dr. James Taff,
Yes,
author of Courting Scandal.
a great
We're
one.
going to uncover Jane's journey with all its twists and turns.
And believe me, it's a journey filled with shifting loyalties, political maneuvering, and ultimately, well, a tragic end.
Well, let's start at the beginning then. With Jane's early life, we know she was born into nobility, which in the Tudor era was like winning half the battle already, I imagine.
Oh, it certainly opened doors. And Jane, well, she managed to secure a position in the royal household, serving five queens. Five queens.
Starting with Catherine of Aragon.
Wow. Five queens. Talk about being at the heart of Tudor history. This wasn't just some honorary title, though, right? What did a maid of honor actually do?
It was a demanding role. Jane would have been expected to participate in, well, pageants
Hmm?
and tournaments, entertain ambassadors, and navigate the complex social hierarchy of the court.
So more than just fetching tea and gossiping, then.
Definitely, yeah. Dr. Taff, he highlights how maids of honor were specifically instructed to socialize with ambassadors, suggesting they played a key role in diplomacy and courtly influence.
Wow, fascinating. It seems these women had more agency than we often give them credit for. But all this was before Jane became Lady Rochford, right?
That's right.
Tell me about her marriage to George Boleyn.
Well, that marriage in 1525 was a strategic alliance. It tied Jane to one of the most ambitious families at court.
Ambitious, how so?
Well, remember, George, he was the brother of Anne Boleyn.
The infamous Anne Boleyn. So did Jane and George have a genuine relationship, or was this purely a power play?
It's hard to say, really. Historical sources on their marriage they're quite limited. And Dr. Taff emphasizes the challenge of separating personal feelings from political strategy in this era.
I can imagine. It really makes you wonder what was going through Jane's mind as Anne, her sister-in-law, started to capture Henry VIII's attention, especially with Jane having served Queen Catherine of Aragon.
Indeed, yeah. As Henry's infatuation with Anne grew and Catherine fell from grace, well, Jane's position must have felt incredibly precarious. Her loyalties and potentially her survival were suddenly at stake.
This is where the Boleyn family's fortunes really changed, right?
Yeah.
Anne's rise, I mean, it must have had a huge impact on their standing at court.
Absolutely. Yeah, they went from relative obscurity to wielding significant power. Dr. Taft points out that Henry and Anne, they worked hard to project an image of unity, a public show of loyalty, as he calls it.
So Jane aligning herself with Anne rather than remaining loyal to Catherine would have been a key part of this strategy. Optics mattered.
Every move was scrutinized. Supporting Anne, well, it signaled to the court that the Boleyns were a force to be reckoned with. But even with Anne as queen, life at court, it remained treacherous.
And Jane soon learns that lesson the hard way.
Right.
Did she get exiled from court around 1534?
Yes, she did. It stemmed from a plot involving Henry's mistress at the time. It seems Jane tried to intervene, potentially to help Anne secure her position, but it backfired spectacularly.
So she tried to do Anne a favor and ended up punished for it. That's rough.
It might seem strange to us, yes, but it demonstrates how easily even someone close to the queen could fall out of favor.
Oh.
This incident is particularly fascinating because it raises questions about the true nature of Jane and Anne's relationship.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Because if they were truly close, I mean, she would have protected her, right?
Precisely. Dr. Taff even suggests that this incident might have strained their relationship as Jane remained in exile until Anne's dramatic downfall in 1536.
And that downfall, of course, is where Jane's role becomes truly controversial. She's often portrayed as the wicked wife who betrayed both Anne and her own husband, George.
For centuries, yeah, she's been painted as the villain of the story. providing testimony that contributed to their executions for treason. But Dr. Taff, he argues that it's not so simple.
So what does he say happened? Did Jane betray them, or is there more to the story?
He acknowledges there's undeniable evidence that Jane provided information to the king, but he believes her motivations and the extent of her involvement are more complex than the traditional narrative suggests.
Okay, so what kind of information are we talking about here? What did Jane actually tell the king?
One key piece of evidence is a statement claiming that Anne confided in Jane about Henry's, shall we say, inadequacies in the bedroom.
Ouch. Not something you want repeated to a king known for his temper.
Especially not Henry VIII.
No, not at all.
And then there's this tantalizing reference to a lost journal kept by a surveyor at the Tower of London, a man named Anthony Antony. He supposedly wrote that Jane carried many stories to the king about Anne and George.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious palace intrigue. What kind of stories?
Well, we can only speculate. But Dr. Taff, he suggests it might have been things like mocking Henry's poetry, criticizing his appearance,
Yeah.
or even questioning his virility.
Basically anything that could portray them as disrespectful and disloyal to the king.
Yeah, precisely. While this wouldn't be enough to prove treason, it would create an atmosphere of suspicion and doubt. It seems Jane might have been caught between a rock and a hard place.
On the one hand, she had to appear loyal to the king.
Yeah.
Especially with Anne's position becoming increasingly vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, she was still married to George and likely wanted to protect him if possible.
Right, and this is where Dr. Taff highlights a letter Jane wrote just days before George's trial, expressing concern for his welfare and promising to petition the king on his behalf.
Hold on. So she's writing this supportive letter while also potentially feeding information to the king that could condemn him.
It does seem contradictory, yes, but Dr. Taft believes that Jane might have been trying to play both sides, hoping to somehow navigate this impossible situation, a high-wire act with deadly consequences, as we know.
And one that ultimately failed.
Mm.
Anne and George were found guilty and executed. I can't imagine what Jane must have been feeling as she witnessed their downfall. Did those events have any impact on what happened to her a few years later?
That's what we'll explore in part 2 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the life of Jane Boleyn, Lady Rochford.
Last time we left off with Jane caught in the turmoil of Anne Boleyn's fall from grace. It's hard to imagine how she must have felt during those dark days.
Well, it's a testament to her resilience, I suppose, or perhaps her ability to adapt to the ever-changing tides at court. But as we know, history, well, it often has a way of repeating itself, and Jane is about to be entangled in yet another royal scandal.
Oh no, not again. So this time it involves Catherine Howard, right?
Mm.
Henry VIII's fifth wife.
That's right.
And a handsome young courtier named Thomas Culpeper.
Hmm.
And of course, well, Jane is right in the thick of it.
More than just being present, she actually plays a pivotal role in this unfolding drama.
So what was her involvement this time?
The sources, they depict her as a go-between for Catherine and Culpeper, facilitating their secret meetings and carrying messages between them.
Oh, wow. So she's acting as a confidant, helping them navigate this dangerous secretive affair.
Mm.
It's fascinating, though, that after her own experience with exile, Jane would risk getting involved in something so risky. I mean, what do you think motivated her?
It's a question that has puzzled historians for centuries. Was it loyalty to Catherine Howard, or perhaps she saw an opportunity to regain influence within the court? Dr. Taft suggests that we have to consider the pressures women like Jane faced in this environment.
You mean the constant need to prove their loyalty, right, and secure their position, especially with a king as volatile as Henry VIII.
Exactly. Yeah. One misstep could mean losing everything. And remember, Jane, she had already experienced the king's wrath firsthand.
That's true. So how did this clandestine affair come to light? Did someone betray Catherine and Culpeper?
Rumors began to circulate within the court, eventually leading to a formal investigation. It wasn't long before suspicion fell upon Jane.
I imagine her past involvement with Anne Boleyn didn't help matters.
Not at all. She was already seen as someone who knew how to play the game, how to manipulate those around her. Her interrogation during this investigation is particularly revealing.
What did Jane tell the investigators? Did she admit to knowing about the affair?
She did, yes. In fact, she confessed to knowing about the relationship between Catherine and Culpeper, and even admitted to helping them arrange their secret meetings.
But did she actually witness anything incriminating? I mean, just knowing about an affair wouldn't necessarily be enough to condemn her.
Oh, that's the crucial point. And Jane's answer to that question sealed her fate. In her deposition, she stated that she believed Culpeper had known the Queen carnally.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty damning statement. Essentially, she's confirming that adultery had taken place.
And remember, even though there was no direct proof of adultery, Jane's testimony as a close confidant of the Queen carried immense weight.
Especially with a king as jealous and insecure as Henry VIII.
He saw this as a direct challenge to his authority, a betrayal of the worst kind.
Right. So what happened to Jane? Was she punished along with Catherine Howard and Thomas Culpeper?
She met the same fate as the accused lovers. Execution for treason. It's a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes could change at the Tudor court, particularly for women who dared to navigate the dangerous world of royal affairs.
It's a tragic end to a life that was both fascinating and deeply complex.
Yeah.
But looking back on Jane's involvement in these two scandals, what does her story tell us about the lives of women during this era?
It's tempting to view Jane as simply a victim of circumstance, right? A pawn caught in the games of powerful men.
Right. Like she was just swept along by the currents of courtly life.
But Dr. Taff, he argues that Jane's story is much more nuanced than that. He points out that while Tudor society was undoubtedly patriarchal, women still found ways to exert influence and navigate this treacherous world.
So she wasn't just a passive observer, but an active participant, making choices and wielding power in whatever way she could.
Precisely, yeah. She was a courtier, a confidant, an informant, and even at times a manipulator. She was trying to survive, to advance her own position within a system that offered women limited options. And in many ways, she was successful for a remarkable length of time.
She served 5 queens.
Mm.
Witnessed some of the most dramatic events in Tudor history.
Yeah.
And managed to stay in the game even after being exiled. I mean, that's quite impressive.
But ultimately, the stakes were incredibly high, and the consequences for failure were severe. Her choices, combined with the ever-shifting power dynamics of the court and Henry VIII's volatile personality, well, it led to her tragic downfall.
It's a cautionary tale for sure, but also a fascinating window into the lives of women who dared to play the game of power in Tudor England. They might not have worn the crown, but their influence was often felt behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Jane's story, despite its ambiguities and unanswered questions, challenges us to look beyond simple labels of victim or villain.
Instead, it encourages us to see her as a complex individual who navigated a world where survival often depended on making difficult and sometimes morally ambiguous choices.
And it reminds us that even in a society dominated by men, women like Jane Boleyn could and did exert influence, albeit at a considerable personal risk.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the life of Jane Boleyn, Lady Rochford. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. And now we have to grapple with a big question. How should history remember her?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Was she a victim of circumstance or a cunning manipulator or somewhere in between? We've seen evidence that points in both directions, really.
She certainly made choices that to us might seem, well, morally questionable, but we also have to consider the context, right? The incredibly restrictive world Tudor women navigated.
Yeah, it seems like she was constantly under scrutiny, facing severe consequences for any misstep.
Exactly. And Dr. Taff, he refers to Jane as too exceptional to draw sweeping conclusions about all women in Tudor England. Her experiences, her motivations, well, they were unique.
But even if she was an outlier, I think her story still offers valuable insights into the lives of women who dared to play the game of power in Henry VIII's court.
It reminds us that power wasn't always a straightforward concept. Women, well, they might not have held official positions of authority, but they found ways to exert influence,
Right.
even if it meant operating behind the scenes or making compromises that seem difficult for us to understand today.
Yeah. It also highlights how history is rarely black and white, doesn't it? We're left piecing together fragments of evidence, conflicting accounts,
Right.
trying to understand the forces that shaped Jane's life and choices.
It's precisely that ambiguity that makes her so fascinating. We're drawn to these figures who defy easy categorization.
So where does that leave us with Jane Boleyn? Is there any way to definitively answer the question of who she really was?
I think her legacy remains open to interpretation. Was she a victim, a
Hmm.
manipulator, or as you said, somewhere in between? We're left to grapple with the complexities of her character, the nuances of her actions, and that's part of what makes studying history so captivating.
It's not just about memorizing facts and dates, is it? It's about engaging with these ambiguous figures and trying to make sense of the past.
And in Jane's case, it prompts us to consider a thought-provoking question. What would we have done in her shoes? How would we have navigated that world, knowing the stakes were so high?
It's definitely something to ponder. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the captivating and often troubling world of Jane Boleyn, Lady Rochford. What a story. We hope you enjoyed it. And be sure to join us next time for another deep dive into history.